Thanks, Rabbi Wall, for those words, for welcoming us into this beautiful space, and for allowing us to honor Carey with a permanent memorial here. The rabbi mentioned it, but I'll repeat it. Carey's friends have contributed to this synagogue a baby grand piano that will reside here permanently and that you all will have a chance to see and hear during the reception that follows. Let me just thank a few more people before we begin this afternoon. I want to especially thank Jamie Saft and Steve Revo for their monumental efforts to produce this event, including the music that you'll hear and the video that you'll be seeing, and also to Winsome Brown and Amy Davidson for their wise counsel, to David Felsen for editing the extraordinary video tribute that we'll see later, to Maria Gambale and Jen Cox for helping with that and for filming this service right now for those who aren't able to make it. To everyone who sent photos of Carey, especially to Megan Greenlee for those gorgeous images of Carey at peace in the last 8 months. To Bill Wu for designing a program for this event that's very true to Carey's spirit. To my sister-in-law, Kira, for helping to organize the reception that follows. And of course to Rose Monserrate, Carey's mother, for hosting all of us at that reception. And I also want to thank everyone now who made a financial contribution to the funeral and memorial costs. I won't name you, but we couldn't have done any of this without you. And finally, thanks to all of you for being here, especially those who traveled a long way to be here. It's unbearably sad to be here in these circumstances. But it's also genuinely wonderful to be surrounded by so many people who loved Carey and were loved by Carey. A very shocking event brings us together. But at the same time, many of us have imagined and dreaded that event for a long time. We all know that we're here today because of Carey's decision alone, and that we couldn't have prevented this. But we also can't help feeling that there was more that each of us could have done and should have done. These very contradictory thoughts and feelings sit right next to each other. They all feel true. Carey, I think, would have been right at home with these contradictions. In the end, it was Carey's inability to reconcile his own internal conflicts and contradictions that brought us here. "When I knock on the door of who I am, I never know who will answer," he once wrote to me. We didn't always know which Carey would answer or come calling either. On the memorial Facebook page that we created after Carey's death, Peter Letterman, whom you'll be hearing from this afternoon, wrote this: "Laugh and cry 10 times deeper than anyone. That was Carey's lot." 10 times sounds about right. Carey lived 41 years, but if we could measure time in intensity of experience and impact on others, that number would be 400. None of us can know what it felt like to be Carey. We'll never know what he was tasting when we were eating the same food. We'll never know what he was hearing when we were listening to the same music. We'll never know what he was absorbing when we read the same poems. But we did know that we often envied him. We knew that he saw, tasted, heard, and experienced life in more color, with more flavor, and with deeper emotional vibrations than the rest of us. Of course, we'll also never know what it was like to experience a pain so bottomless that it often defied even Carey's powers of description. I don't mean to say that Carey was alone in facing life with the gift and burden of periodically extreme highs and lows. But what was truly special about Carey was the combination of that emotional spectrum with a dazzling intellect, with a capacity for articulating his experiences with precision and poetry, and a deep compassion that allowed him to enlist both his joys and his sorrows for the benefit of others. And so from his peaks, Carey literally demanded that we share with him how much pleasure could be extracted from life. And from his valleys, Carey gained a highly refined, empathic attunement to the pain and suffering of others, which allowed him to provide wise counsel and critical support to so many other people in their own times of need. We may not have known what it was like to be Carey, but we all know what it was like to be with Carey. On the day after Carey's death, a friend wrote to me, "You and Carey chewed through a lot of life together." That may be, but Carey did most of the chewing. To spend time with Carey was to be accompanied simultaneously by a hyper-articulate soundtrack of running commentary and a walking journal that recorded and could play back years later every word you said in return. Carey's subjects were innumerable, but his theme was often the same. You have to try this. Many of my memories of Carey involve being summoned to his lair on Waverly Place, on Stanton Street, in his beloved Red Hook, and being seated ceremoniously in the most comfortable and strategically placed chair. I would be handed a drink, a White Russian, or a mudslide during that phase that some of you remember, or a very fine whiskey, perhaps invited to ingest THC in one form or another. There would be delicacies gathered from or delivered by various local eateries or elaborately prepared by Carey himself. And then Carey would curate the night's entertainment, which might include a playlist of songs and a mini lecture about the artists and their influences, a movie being watched for the first or the 10th time, an unjustly neglected television show. The rules were clear. I was to be fully absorbed in the evening's offerings, even as Carey kept one vigilant eye on me. It was understood that the proper aesthetic responses that came naturally to Carey required discipline and focus from others. Many of you shared similar experiences with Carey. It's been wonderful to read about them these last few days on the Memorial Facebook page, which has become a permanent shrine both to Carey's enthusiasms and I think to the positive potentials of social media. Just a second.